Nobody knows how long your career is going to last. And suddenly, for whatever reason, often age, the phone stops ringing.
Kia ora and welcome to the Singers Having Coffee podcast. It's so lovely to have you with me today for what is a really special conversation. We've just finished recording, and Anne-Marie Speed is one of those people who really changed my life as a teacher, but also as a singer. I met Anne-Marie way back. I have to look at my wall because that's when I know that I finished my degree, and I met her not long after. So we're talking 2012. I started my work with Anne-Marie Speed in my very first Estill level 1 and 2 course. I wanted to learn how to sing better. I was obsessed with singing. And that's where we met. And honestly, I became completely hooked by not only the way in which she teaches, and she made me feel like I could achieve anything with my voice, but also in the specificity. Oh no, I shouldn't have chosen that word. Anne-Marie, help me out. In the way in which she could be so specific with her teaching to really help me with a part of my voice that I often wasn't aware of that I could have control over. Anne-Marie has been an accent and voice coach for almost 30 years. She is the spoken voice teacher at the Royal Academy of Music in London, and literally her credits are longer than my arm. She's worked on Britain's Got Talent, X Factor, The Voice. She's worked in numerous West End shows. And most notably, she worked with Sheridan Smith on the Cilla Black biopic, as well as working on the Amy Winehouse biopic. And I think what you might know more recently is, a little film called Wicked, where she was the voice coach for a couple of the actors. So we sat down to have a talk about all things voice acting, professional work versus amateur work. And also, you might not know, but both of us are from New Zealand. Anne-Marie is actually from Dunedin. Her life growing up with her father, George Speed, being a fantastic broadcaster and vocal professional, and how that kind of shaped her use of the voice and her own career, moving then to London. But we're going to get into all of that in the discussion that I have with Anne-Marie. So sit back, relax, and enjoy it. All of the information are down in the show notes, so enjoy the conversation. Singers Having Coffee with Anne-Marie Speed. Thank you so much, Anne-Marie, for coming on today. I'm really excited to have a conversation with you about your journey to become what you are today. Just sounds like so insane. But thinking about, your journey and kind of where that's led you, because, you work with some really big names in the industry. And as we were talking before we kind of came on today about, some of these names that you can't even tell us about, who you work with and the names of these people. But I did see on your IMDb that you've recently been working on your on Wicked, which is really cool.
Oh, well, that was at the tail end of lockdown, so it's a couple of years ago. But yes, I did work on that with a couple of people,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a fantastic experience. Except that we were stuck in these sort of new studios in Elstree, and because of COVID, I wasn't allowed on set, so I didn't get on set. So I was a bit upset about that. But where we were in the there were rehearsal, and this is where they had the witch flying school. So it was like this big kind of warehouse attached to the
That's so
school.
cool.
They'd be doing training there, and then we would be in the music rooms where they would be rehearsing, and then people would come in there, and I would coach them, and then they would go off and do a bit of shooting. So it was great. It was great fun, and what a privilege! What a privilege! I think particularly, being a vocal coach, and it's something I never ever ever take for granted. The time that you spend in a room on your own with someone, working with them and coaching them, is such a privilege,
That's
and
awesome.
I never ever ever take that for granted.
I just can also like, especially being part of, I think people who aren't into musical theatre don't quite know how important Wicked was, like in terms of the culture of musical theatre. But obviously, um, it's been around for a really long time. I know some of my students come into the studio and they're like, "Oh, have you heard of Wicked?" And I'm like, "Pff, have you heard of Wicked?" It was a huge part of musical theatre and the way that singing kind of evolved. But I mean, that would have been just amazing, especially to be a part of like such kind of. It was really historical, actually, that they've done such an amazing job with the movies, actually, that they've been so true to the stage show.
Well, I think the differences are very, very interesting, and it just looks so fantastic.
Oh, it does.
Visually, it's just sumptuous, isn't it? But just
Mm,
getting back to Wicked, and when it came out, it was about 2002,
mm.
about 2002, 2001, around about there. So it's almost 25 years old. And I remember because I was in New York with Mary Hammond, who established the musical theatre course at the Royal Academy of Music here in London. And it was the first musical theatre course within a classical conservatoire here in the UK. And she had been doing some workshops at the Royal College and the Royal Academy for the classical students in musical theatre. And then the Academy, I don't know whose, probably was Mary's idea to set up this specific training. And in the very beginning, it was a 2-year course, and for a couple of years, and then it became a 1-year course. And when we were doing that, we went to, excuse me, we went to see Joe Estill present at the National Association of Teachers of Singing conference in New York in 2001, excuse me, which was a musical theatre and belt conference.
Oh, wow,
And
that must
we
have
were
been
there.
amazing.
Yeah, it was actually. So, a long time ago now. And I remember Mary saying, perhaps, and I saw that it was coming up, and I said to Mary, I said, we need to go to this. We need to see what our American colleagues are teaching. And Joe Estill was presenting at the very, very beginning of the session. And Joe Estill really was the person who found a way to teach belt safely. And that's really what made her name in the 1980s in New York, that she analyzed it and she worked out a way to be able to teach it. And that has had a huge impact here in the UK in terms of, and now internationally. But that's really is because of Joe Estill. And I said, we need to go and see what they're teaching and listen to Joe. And we were there, and in terms of what was on at the time, I'll have to go back and have a little look. But Mary was saying, perhaps belting's done. Perhaps we've done that now. Perhaps we've moved on, and,
Hmm.
and we are looking at new ways of singing and different types of sound. And I went, oh, okay. So perhaps this is going to be historical. And then Wicked showed up. And I think it just goes to show that it's never going away. It may have
No.
slightly different incarnations and different styles, but that put belting firmly and squarely back into everybody's consciousness. And
Yeah.
we have to finding a way to teach it safely. And that's absolutely what Estill gives us.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that, I definitely credit you as being the person who helped me find my belt through Estill. Beforehand, I had no idea how to, I was doing something. I always used to call it my felt, like my fake belt. I had sort of like, I could sing loud and sort of like high, but I never really sort of got that vocal fold mass going on and actually, all of the other mechanics that go along with it. And especially, Wicked really, it showed us that, oh my goodness me, the B flat is not the end of the female belt range. and then everyone was like, how in God's name are we going to start reaching these like G's and all that sort of stuff? And it kind of then led us all to kind of train even more and to train our voices even more because they are really high notes.
They are, and the thing is now, because pretty much everybody can belt now.
Hmm.
And once again, this is because of Estill. So now the issue is not only can you belt, but can you sound like you? Can you do it on all of the vowels? How do you get into it? How do you get out of it? What else do you do? And that's what really great singers do, that they can, it's how they get into it. And we hear a sound that is very distinctively them. And
Hmm.
I think that's very, very much where we are. And that's, I have to say, has always been my approach. You always want people to sound like themselves. So fitting in with the style, but you don't want them to fit in with the style so much that they lose their own sound.
Hmm. Is that something then that you're working with professional singers, but you're also working at the Royal Academy, working, sorry?
Still,
Still, yeah. And I saw that from 1994 you started working there, but that was obviously, as you just said, like basically when the course started, right?
yeah, yeah. I
That's
think I'm
amazing.
the only original member of staff. Just
Wow.
yeah,
Wow, I'm just like,
yeah. But I'm there because I really love it. I really enjoy it.
mm,
I love being in that building and in that space. And I also feel that students, and it's a postgrad course, that students need good information. And I'm there working with the actor's voice because that was my first training.
mm-hmm,
And where I feel we are now, because there is no repertory theatre for actors anymore, pretty
mm,
much in the UK, it's all gone. So there's very little theatre space for actors apart from musical theatre performers. And they are in a unique situation that their work is pretty much all in the theatre, but that's not true for actors. So musical theatre performers are in this wonderful situation. Yes, it's amplified, but all theatre is amplified in London now, sadly.
ah, okay.
We've lost acoustic theatre and
Wow.
in the UK, and certainly in London,
Mm-hmm.
certainly in the West End, some of the smaller theatres outside, and that's a bigger discussion. And it's happened without comment.
Oh. Is
Nobody's
even
commented about it.
Was it the Trafalgar Square Theatre? Is that amplified as well? I was
Trafalgar Studios,
Trafalgar Studios.
pretty much whenever there's music, they always amplify,
Oh wow.
and I
Okay.
think it's a shame. Um, but I think for actors, for musical theatre performers, they are on stage and working with an audience. Actors coming out of, as is described, or used to be straight acting, which is basically no singing, they don't have that opportunity.
Hmm.
So people coming out of the major drama schools are expecting to get a lead in a TV series
Yeah.
within 3 years of graduating
Phew.
and going
That
into
pressure.
and going into film. So what this
Hmm.
means is that there's very little opportunity for them to use their voices in a bigger space. And so I think that the technical information that actors receive now is even more important
Hmm.
because there's no way where for them, or far fewer places. It's not that there's no, but very far fewer for them to learn with other actors. And so when you used to go and work in theatre, you would see other actors and you would learn from them
Mm.
and the way that they use their voices. And this is true. And you're working with actors who are more experienced in film and film and TV, of course. But it's not as many opportunities.
Yeah, it's a shame, obviously, because that was the way we learn, obviously, is to watch other people, the way that they approach things, their vocal warm-ups, what are their professionalism like, and seeing, I was really fortunate that I had that. And I know that that's how you started from doing, research for today. I was seeing that you actually, you started as an actor in Dunedin, but your dad was actually a broadcaster. That's amazing.
Yes, he was, and he was English, so he emigrated. He's one of the
Ah,
ten
okay.
pound poms, and he emigrated from the UK in 1952, and because there wasn't really much from here,
Mm-hmm.
and initially to be a surveyor, and then because although he was from north of England, he changed his accent. He went into the army and he changed his accent at a time where accent really did keep you in your place.
Yeah.
And I think for even a lot of people here, it's something I say to my younger students here at the academy, class really did keep you in your place. And if you were a northern working class person, lad in his instance, and you didn't have access to a higher education, your opportunities were pretty limited.
Mm.
And this is still within living memory. So he emigrated, but he was always very interested in theatre. He was quite a Renaissance man in a lot of ways, and an autodidact. He taught himself and
Wow.
became incredibly well read and very interested in music and loved his amateur theatricals. And he had a beautiful voice. He had a beautiful speaking voice and a lovely singing voice, and he had this wonderful English accent. And in New Zealand, in the 19 late sort of late 50s, with the fledgling New Zealand Broadcasting Corporation, someone said to him, "Why don't you go and audition there?" And he did, and he got a job. He got a job in broadcasting, which would
Amazing.
never, ever have happened here in the UK, ever.
Mm. Well, especially in the UK, like in New Zealand, they like that sort of that British accent was very much the radio the
Yeah.
radio accent, that's sort of, and also the acting accent as well. I kind of felt like it, that sort of, back then, even when I was training as well, it was like you spoke on stage with an English accent. You don't, well, sort of like RP was generally what we used.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, in New Zealand, we the accents were there was a range of accent. It depended on what you were doing, but it was still a New
Mm,
Zealand accent.
hmm.
And I think that's really important. Then you look at the voice and speech trainers in New Zealand, that would still be a New Zealand accent, but it would be a lighter accent.
Hmm.
And I think that the point about that is to be understandable, to be intelligible, and 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 I think that is true here. And I think perhaps slightly different focus that we're talking about now. I think the issue here in the UK now is that while we should be hearing a range of accents, this is absolutely right. We should be hearing a range of accents,
Yeah.
but every accent needs to be intelligible. And we should be hearing a range of accents, but not every speaker of every accent is interesting to listen to or intelligible. And we
Mm.
can make accents intelligible. You hear this on radio, and you listen to BBC Two here, which is a music station, and you listen to. I was just listening to it before I came on. Vern, what's his last name? Vern and Sarah Cox isn't on. They're from Bolton.
Yes.
They're from Bolton, right?
Hmm.
And you listen to the way that they speak. It's so expressive.
Yeah.
It's so clear. It's so engaging. And I think people are missing out now. I think a lot of coaches, I think where we are, it's a big, big problem, I think, that uh, in welcoming a full range of accent, which is absolutely right, the point is, are these accents easy on the ear in a way, and can we hear them, can we understand them? Because the performance that we're giving is not just for Britain, but even within Britain it's hard to understand people.
Mm.
But if you're also talking to an international audience, are people going to be able to understand you without putting on the subtitles?
Yeah, true. And also, obviously the whole breadth of learning. Well, I don't want to say learning to speak, but like learning the actor's voice is also about, all the intonation and all the modulation and things like that. That doesn't just happen from the way that we speak normally, not for everybody. And so about learning all of that, I suppose, as well, isn't it?
Well, yeah, and I don't know how much of that still happens. I mean, I still teach like that, and some of my
Mm,
colleagues do, because it is the whole point about training, whether we're talking about singing or voice training. I think more so for the actor's voice is that people don't notice it.
mm,
To say it's good acting. That's the point and also the problem. Because when people can't observe training, they say it's just natural, there isn't any. And just getting back to the singing for the moment, if I'm working with an actor who isn't a singer, and there's a lot of hard work at the beginning to really get them confident in their singing and moving the voice. But one of the things I say to them, wait until we have one of our first meetings with direct or producers or whoever, or when you start to do rehearsals and when we first get on set, and as soon as people say, gosh, you sound so natural, it's like a big thumbs up. That's what you want. But we don't want people to hear the work, but that doesn't mean there hasn't been any, and that's the problem. It's a big, big problem. So this is even more true, I think, for the actor's voice.
yeah.
So when people don't hear effort or hear training, they think there isn't any.
Mm,
And if you don't have it, then I think it has a big consequence on your training. And as we're talking about this, Zoe, something I feel very, very strongly about. The whole point about voice training is it's democratic.
yeah.
It gives everybody the same skills. Because, the elite performers, for want of a better expression, are always going to be okay, pretty much up to a point.
Yeah.
But it's the next kind of rank below. And if you don't have really good access to your voice and know how to use your voice, you're not going to be cast in the same or considered in the same casting. You're just not.
Mm,
And so my objection to saying, oh, you can speak however you like, is that if you're not a very interesting or expressive speaker, it will affect your casting. And the whole point of training is not to change who you are, but actually to enhance and develop your ability to express yourself and serve text and serve character. And I think this is somehow getting lost in the conversation. And this
mm.
is true in broadcasting as well.
Admittedly, I used to listen to a lot of radio. So I was like very much, and when you're saying Radio 2 and Sarah Cox, I love the show. I was like a big Radio 2 listener. And then during Brexit, it kind of like overwhelmed me with sort of bad news. So I sort of stopped listening to the radio in general. And then we sort of came into all the other bad news that's kind of going on in the world at the moment. But I agree with you completely. I think that it's about, as you're saying, working with the voice. And I think, this next sort of rung down, you could say, or, the elite that you're talking about that are working, say, in Wicked, we're talking about maybe a lot of the ensemble would be in what you would call the working actors, right? The people who actually genuinely have to be in show after show after show and can't do like one movie a year and call it sort of like it for the entire 12 months. They're using their voice on stage. They're doing in lots of different genres and also different, TV, movie, all that sorts of, what do you call that? Types of acting and voice use as well.
Yes, but even I think even with once again so-called elite performers or people who are that they tend to be busy, so they
Hmm.
tend to go from one project to another because you don't know how nobody knows how long your career is going to last,
Yeah.
and suddenly for whatever reason, often age, the phone stops ringing, so you're not considered. So
Mm.
this ability to kind of reinvent yourself and to be able to do different things is really really important, and everybody likes the next new thing. But to maintain a career over some years takes a lot of dedication and
Mm.
skill and determination. It's hard work. It doesn't just happen.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think that unfortunately, this whole a lot of what happens on YouTube with all of the sort of online, really, with all the even Instagram and things like that, is a lot of auto tune. There's a lot of drivers going on in the background. I think a lot of people cheat the system a little bit and think that there's, as you're saying, when you don't see the effort going into it, we assume that just everybody has that we do enjoy the voices of, that they just have a whole bunch of talent, which could be one side. They could be talented people, but also talent really doesn't get you, it only gets you so far, and you've got to, put in the hard work as well.
Well, I don't think anyone who is really successful is there without hard work. I think
Hmm.
that's absolutely true, and whether it's stage or whether it's film, and particularly if one is continuingly uh, successful, it's because of hard work. I
Mm.
think that it is a lot of work to maintain a career at that level. It really, really is. And filming is hard work. Filming is really hard work. It's in a very different way to theatre. But if you're being picked up at 5 o'clock in the morning and you're in the makeup chair at 6 or 6:30, and then you're on set doing your vocal warm up at 7:30 to start shooting at 8:30,
Yeah.
right? And that happens, and you're doing the same scene until 6 o'clock in the evening.
Wow.
That's a lot of work on your voice. And yes, there are breaks, and that's also a problem because then you've got to come back and think about, know where you are, and you've got to be able to keep the voice going, and that's part of my job. And to keep the voice consistent over the
Hmm.
course of the day, and whether that's speaking or singing, and generally in singing, you speaking to the producers and saying, well, this scene is quite a big sing, so can we do that either a little bit late in the shoot process? Can we start a little bit later in the day? So we're not asking people to sing live.
Hmm.
Sometimes you can't really help it, at 9 o'clock in the morning, but that is what you have to do. And I think the other misunderstanding is that people think that, and I think this is also going to be very interesting, that what I've done previously, which is coach people to in these biopics, so to sound ish like somebody. Not It's not an impression because then you can't act it. But I wonder now what's going to happen with AI. I think that's going to be the next interesting thing.
Mm.
I just wonder if I'm going to be doing that again, to be honest with you.
Really?
Yeah, I wonder whether they'll think, that has been happening, not on the projects that I've been working on. And that really is the actor singing. So when I worked on the Amy Winehouse movie, that is Marisa Bella. That's her singing.
Yeah.
That's not been fiddled with.
Wow. I
All
mean, it
right.
was beautiful. I think I like that you said that, it's not an impression. She sounded very, I mean, it sounds like Amy Winehouse, but it doesn't, it she sounds very, it still sounds like her singing. It's not an impression like you're saying, but it doesn't sound like it's sort of like some AI that's doing that. It's incredible. The way that she's moved her voice for that show, for that movie, was incredible.
She worked incredibly hard, and
Mm,
part of it is, we wanted us. I just said we want something, and you speak to the director and to the actor, and you just to say, suggest that a sound that reminds people of her. And I've done that on a couple of things previously, because otherwise an impression is just very, very hard to act.
mm,
And then with some voices are so iconic, then you end up miming to it. I mean, there was no miming on this because she was singing. And that's also very, very difficult to make it work because it's so rigid. So that's also a very, very specific skill.
yeah.
Very difficult, actually, for an act, much harder than it sounds.
Mm.
And then are we getting a bit of a mixture of the actor's voice and a bit of AI? And who knows? Who knows where we're going with this now?
Well, because I know for The Greatest Showman, I think that they comped two singers together. So there's like, for example, like Michelle Williams was playing, and then Lauren Allred kind of sang all the high notes, but Michelle Williams sang all the low ones. And you sort of had this like comping of the voices coming together.
Well, Lauren Allred was singing for the Rebecca Ferguson character for the Jenny
Yes.
Lind. So I don't know. I don't
I
know.
was I was just thinking about, in terms of the way that AI's kind of got, I suppose that's a little bit of the cheating, you could say, as well, that you're kind of hearing that the actor is not necessarily able to reach all of those notes, and maybe that's also what's going to happen. But
Well,
as
it's interesting too because still there is and we'll see what AI can do, but a
mm,
lot of the sound engineers and recorders and people who are actually doing the mixing will say, that they can't defy the laws of physics. So they have to
yeah,
work with something. They have to work with something. And with these movies, there's live capture. So because you want to get as much live capture of sound as you can while people are shooting. And then some things you have to go back and record in a studio. But
yeah.
that's very expensive.
Ah, okay.
And it's expensive to do that. And also the actors, well, you've got to bring the actors back. And how much later, how much after the shoot, once you've got the shoot, once you've done that, the principal photography, once you've done that, they might be off doing something else. So I've sometimes done what they call ADR, which is the dialogue, a year after the principal photography, after you've done the shooting. So not for the musicals that I've worked on, but for some other
Wow.
movies. And the actors are coming going, where are we? God, my head just isn't in that space. So it can be very, very challenging if it's a really big, there's a lot of post-production.
Well, I mean, you just saying like Wicked was end of COVID. I'm like,
Yeah.
how long ago was that?
I started working on that at the end of 22. 22
Wow.
and 23. So it's over 2 years, 2.5 years ago. And so they finished shooting. It was about, oh gosh, I don't about the middle of, was it, of 2023? And then all of the post-production.
Wow.
And it's such a big job. It's such a big job.
Well, you could just see it from the production. I mean, like I just sat there like in awe. Just it was so beautiful and so
Oh, it is
beautifully done.
absolutely beautiful and beautifully designed, and 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 actually sort of being there in the studio when they're recording and recording with the actors that I was working with, and that's also such a privilege when you got the composer and the producers and everybody there, and just how efficient and kind everybody is. They're so supportive, and such a great environment. It really was. Just once again, it's just such a privilege
Oh,
just to be there.
that's
Yeah.
That's and also like I just think about like the energy that you get like when you're working with people, that it all just happens so fast, and you're bouncing off ideas and they're coming up with ideas, and it's just that must just be so fantastic as well.
Well, they're not my ideas. So
No,
you really,
or the
really,
actors' ideas or the director's ideas
or
and
the
things, and that
composer,
kind of, or
you
the
really,
composer, yeah.
the
Uh,
composer is a big voice, rightly so. In these instances, when you're doing that, and when it, particularly, I mean, Stephen Schwartz was very, very hands on, very
Really?
hands on. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Not saying anything out of turn, but I mean, the most positive way. Just what a dream, absolute dream.
Oh, that must have just been amazing to like just even just like hear the process as well, like just to be kind of like there. That's really amazing.
Yeah, it's just great. You know, what can I say? It just is, and just the little, the little insights, um, and it's such a learning experience for me as well. Of course,
Mm.
you get these insights of how people see their own work. You know.
I wonder if it differs to the way that people who are maybe not so famous see their work as well. Do you find that there's sort of like a confidence difference in the way that they sort of view their work as opposed to, some of the, I don't want to call them kids in the master's program at the Royal Academy, but the younger sort of generation coming up, is it sort of, do you notice that there's a difference?
Well, I think one of the big differences between students in training and any of these big projects, and this is true for theatre as well, but I think especially for film, is that you have to get it right. And it's really is as simple as that.
Okay.
And with some of the projects that I've been working on, can the actor do it? And
Okay.
so you get to a point where you go and they have to sing for producers, and the director. And therefore, if they can't do it, what are they going to do? Are they going to mime? Are they going to do some kind of um, mix in the studio?
Yeah.
So there's pressure. There's pressure on you as a vocal coach, but there is a lot of pressure on the performer, a lot,
Hmm.
because some projects might be pulled if they can't do it, or or it requires a big shift. So it's a huge vote of confidence on the part of the producers. And just getting back to the whole question of AI, movie making is very expensive.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's a big punt. And what if they're not going to be able to do it? And I think when you have a process and you have time, and the actors are incredibly committed
Hmm.
because that's what they're going to, and very, very nervous very often. But I think the big difference is that when you fail in these big projects, you fail on an international scale.
Mm.
One has an opinion. And so the work that you do, has to work. And they are very committed to it because they know it's either going to work or it isn't.
Yeah.
There's only so much you can do in post production. I think with students, I don't think this is right. It's a lot of them are still hoping to work, and the work that they're doing is not perhaps as exposing.
Hmm.
Although I always say to my students, here in London, we're so lucky. London is unique. It's even different to New York because we have so many drama schools which don't really exist in the same way in the US and the West End. So they are next to each other. So it's not
Mm.
just a dream. That's what you are going to do. The West End is here in London. You go to a London drama school, and the chances are that you will end up, hope, in the West End. But what I would also say about London is you never know who's going to be in the audience
Hmm.
because it's London.
Yeah.
So you just have to bear that in mind and just make sure you're giving the best performance you can every time because people do get cast from people coming to, you don't know who's going to be in the audience. You just don't know.
Oh, I think that's true though for most of the places where, I mean, where you're going to be performing because I mean, that's how I landed in the musical that I'm currently in because the other musical that I was in, someone came and then they were like, oh, okay, do you want to play that role? And then you get one job kind of coming off the back of the other.
Absolutely.
And it's always like that. But coming back to this idea of talent and the kind of the way that you're working, did you did you find or were you told that you had a particular talent for, you worked as an actor in Dunedin, did you was that something that was kind of like built into at home? Did your dad like correct you when you were speaking, or was there sort of a talent there? Was it, how did that work like in your household when you were growing up?
Well, Dad was very much into amateur theatrics. He loves the drama, and I have memories of Saturday morning dishes, and he'd be washing the dishes, and I'd be helping him with his lines, and Hamlet, helping him learn Hamlet. And so there was always, and my mother was also very articulate. But so there was lots of lots of chat and
Hmm.
lots of theatre and just an awareness, really. And I did love performing and was young and quite confident, and people liked what I did at the time, and thought, oh, perhaps I really thought that's what I wanted to do.
Hmm.
And came to London and went to drama school, and just kind of realised, perhaps it had been a tiny little realisation before that. I just thought I liked the performing aspect, and but the life of being an actor did not appeal to me
Mm.
at all, and not being in control. And the other thing was, Zoe, I couldn't find my fit. I just couldn't
Okay.
find my fit, and here and the things that I wanted to do. And there are a couple of near misses that would have perhaps got me into some of the big companies and everything. But looking back now, of course, I feel very lucky that I decided to take a different path. And you asked about the questions. It was my voice teacher at drama school, Barbara Houseman, who I got to know very, very well, and who said to me, when I was, could see that I was just adrift a little bit. And
Hmm.
she said, and knew my interest in voice and things. She said, well, why don't you consider being a voice teacher? And I went, oh, okay. And then so I auditioned for the what was then the Advanced Diploma in Voice Studies at the now the Royal Central School of Speech and Drama, and which is now the MA in Voice Studies. And I did the MA after I'd done the Advanced
Hmm.
Diploma. And I remember auditioning for that and being accepted. I mean, going, yeah, okay. And then starting and the first day, and just go, oh, this is really interesting.
Oh,
This is
cool.
this is really, and that's where I met Joe Estill and what was then the Voice Research Society, which became the British Voice Association, in a back room on one of their symposia or conferences, talking about
Wow.
her work. And there had been a little bit of a buzz about her, and they brought her over specifically. And I just going, this was all the lights going off because I couldn't belt. I
Hmm.
couldn't belt. And I remember going to all the teachers after drama school, going to all the teachers that I could afford and that I was told were really, really good, and none of them could teach me how to do it. And it was a
Mm.
puzzle, Zoe, because as we all know, belt is just your chest voice pushed higher. And you know what? I had a pretty good chest voice. I'd done all of this acting, and it was all acoustic. There was nothing, no amplification, nothing wrong with my chest voice. And I pushed and pushed, and boy, did that not work. So there
It's
was
interesting,
clearly
isn't it, how
something
that
else
doesn't
going on.
work?
Yeah, it doesn't. I haven't met anyone that's worked for. You met anyone that's worked for?
Do you know what? I've met a couple of people where it eventually doesn't work anymore, but it works for a little bit until maybe about the A4, and then it doesn't work anymore. But it just sounds a bit like they're yelling at me. So,
Yeah, it's not belting, it's not singing.
no.
And I think that's a difference. So I did that. So that was a long time ago. So
Mm.
1990, 91. And then in 92 when she did her first course here in the UK, I did that course, and then I was kind of hooked, really, even though I couldn't do any of it. Couldn't do any of it. Didn't really understand it, but I knew it was a good idea.
That's so cool. But that must have been so interesting though as well, because what I've heard from Jo and the way that she worked, she was very direct. Not in a mean way, but in a supportive way, but she was very direct. That must have been was that quite surprising to then sort of like meet someone that kind of had the skills to teach you what you wanted to do?
She was direct, but also she'd had quite a hard time
Okay.
because what she did was so revolutionary, and there was quite a lot of snobbery
Hmm.
and sexism
Hmm.
because she was older.
Yeah.
But she had been a singer for most of her life. She didn't start on this journey till she was in her middle 40s.
Wow.
She didn't learn to belt till she was 48. So she started from scratch, and she became one of the late 20th century's greatest voice scientists and researchers. And this is true,
Hmm.
knowing nothing about science.
Yeah.
And she was on such a mission. So I think that sometimes there was a degree of impatience. She felt people weren't really listening to what she was saying and just holding a point of view without really engaging with what she was talking about. But she was always very kind to me. But I had a very different experience with her, but she could be pretty sharp.
Mm-hmm.
And I know people that she was very sharp with, and I think particularly because she felt she was on such a mission to just to change the way that we think about voice and the way that voice was understood and taught.
Mm-hmm. How do you, I mean, from everything that, and obviously that from your work that I know you do, you're an Estill instructor and you've, testing privileges. And I think you got the Vanguard a couple of years ago, right? No, in
Oh, the
London.
Vanguard was the Joe's first
That's right.
qualifications. I was very, very honoured to receive the Estill Lifetime Achievement Award. So that was
Yes.
in 2019. Yeah, so it was.
That's amazing. And through your work with Estill, how would you, I mean, it's obviously shaped the way that you teach as well, though, hasn't it? I mean, you started teaching before you met Joe.
Not really. I
Ah,
tried to,
okay.
but I met her while I was training,
Mm-hmm.
and then when I did her first course, and I just thought, I have to try to teach them this. When Mary asked me to teach, get Estill in through the back door, basically, at the academy, through the actor's voice. And I just thought, well, I have to teach this work. So I sat with a little primer on my book and I just went through it because there was no one there really to help. But I would go and assist Joe in different places um,
Mm-hmm.
to to teach. And the very first time was in 1994, in about September, when she asked me to go to Copenhagen, and I'd done another course, and I went there to help her. And she said to me, "So, Anne Marie, what do you want to teach?" And I went, "Oh, I'll have a go at anything." And her eyes narrowed, and she went, "Okay." And I remember thinking, "Oh no, I know. I'm not saying I can teach anything. I just mean that I'll have a go." And this is an example, right? So we were doing what was called vocal fold mass and is now body cover, and this is when we look at uh, different vocal fold contact, which is a key factor in understanding and controlling dynamic. And so the vocal folds can close with more or less contact. They can have thick folds or thin folds. And the thick folds, e, ah, oo, for example. And so I was going, e, ah, oo, and she went, too loud. This is like front of everybody. And then like time kind of stood still. And I thought, oh, what am I going to do? Am I going to be defensive? Or am I actually going to listen to what she's telling me? And I'm very glad that I made the second choice. And I went, okay. And, this is in front of anybody. It's not, Anne Marie, do you mind? I was like, two. I went, okay. So looking back, it was quite funny. At the time, it wasn't that funny, but it taught me quite a lot about just learning to listen.
That's incredible. I think that it's interesting how though in a lot of our training as actors, I don't know if you've experienced this, how it is really learning to take those it's not a criticism, but like learning to take those sorts of that feedback and how you deal with that feedback and how you then work with it. I mean, that's challenging, especially that this was like your first course that you sort of like taught with her on.
Yeah, it taught me quite a lot. But I think that giving feedback is also such a skill,
Mm.
and it has to always be positive. And talking about singing lessons, of people coming for singing lessons, and I'm sure you experience exactly the same things, Zoe, and perhaps this was in your own training. But so many people are traumatized by
Oh
singing
yeah,
lessons. They've
absolutely.
had such a terrible experience, and yet they still come back.
Mm.
And to get people into a place where they can feel relaxed and be brave and try things out and not worry about getting things wrong is a huge part of what we do. And how to coach, how to give people feedback without being personal or making them feel a loss of confidence is hugely, hugely important.
Mm.
And it starts in your studio and in the one-to-ones, and the more that you can develop that skill, that makes a big difference when you start to work with people who are more experienced, or with some of the shows and the films that I worked on, because you can't make people feel bad. Nobody
Yeah.
nobody works well if they feel criticized.
Mm.
You can't be open, and we have to be open to exploring. And that doesn't mean that we can't give feedback, but how we give feedback and to make it constructive and positive, as opposed to just criticize.
Mm. Did that come though through your experience, like as an actor and coming through, or did you feel like I had a amazing, I hear all about these people who've, these students coming in, they have like these awful experiences. And actually sometimes they come in and they're like, Zoe, like, can you just be really mean to me? Like, and I'm like, no, that's not, I don't really think we know through what we know about psychology of learning that it's actually not going to help you. And I'm just not that type of person because that's also not the way that I was taught. And I was really fortunate that I had very constructive feedback throughout my singing kind of career and also through all my lessons and the way that when we work together as well, I really valued that because I was always quite sensitive to any type of like if someone was mean to me or laughed or whatever at what I was doing, I was very sensitive to that because I find singing so personal. But did your sort of mindset around that and the way that you teach in that way, did that come through a bad experience that you've had, or because that was the way that you were also taught and you liked that way of teaching?
Well, I think to some extent, yes. Although I would be, there are things that I couldn't do and people couldn't teach me.
Mm-hmm.
But I think also, I just think that, as I've said, that people learn when they feel relaxed.
Mm.
Nobody learns if they feel under pressure or if they feel anxious. And actually, as you may know, I'm doing this course with one of my Estill master trainer colleagues, and who's also a graduate from the musical theatre course at the Royal Academy of Music. This is Simon Ward, and Simon is also a psychologist.
Yeah.
And we're doing a workshop on psychology for teachers, and precisely for this reason, which is partly, to be able to read what people bring into a room. And one of the first things we have to do is put people at their ease.
Yeah.
Nobody learns well if they feel stressed. It's just, how is that even uh, controversial? That this idea of taking status and almost bullying people into trying to use their voice better just has never ever made sense to me. I've never learnt well if I felt anxious. Who does?
Mm.
Who does? So I
Oh,
don't
no
want to
one.
create an environment where people feel that they can't make mistakes, because if we that's what we need to do to learn and to explore.
Mm-hmm.
So if people are coming for a lesson, making a choice to step into your studio and paying you for a lesson, I think the least we can do is be pleasant and help them relax and enjoy it, and a little bit of humor as we are focusing on the job at hand. And that's true for everybody is nervous in a lesson the first time. Everyone.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they're
But
freaking out because they're like, well, who is this person, this stranger? And you forget that you're also a stranger to them. They're coming in and like kind of like laying it all on the line, and then you know they're also wanting a little bit of a reassurance, like, can I do this? Is this okay? Is this an awful sound that I'm making?
reassurance is one of the most important things that we do.
Mm,
And acceptance, this whole thing about accepting what someone brings into a room. So if someone's coming to a lesson and they say to me, "Oh, well, I haven't done much practice this week," I'm going, okay, right, you're an adult. And if you're telling me you haven't had time to do practice, you've not had time to do practice. So can I help you with that? Is it because you don't know how to practice or what to practice? Or can I help you with that? So as opposed to, the whole kind of the judgment and the oh my goodness, it's like, okay, just accept what people bring, and we work
yeah.
with where people are and what they bring into a room, and whatever that is, just whatever that is.
I mean, I have to say a huge thank you to you for teaching me in that way and being so accepting in that way because I definitely take that into my teaching now and I is exactly the same. You're an adult, that's absolutely fine. Let's practice right now. Right. Where is the voice at today? And I that was something I just have to say a huge thank you for that because I didn't I think a lot of the time when you come into teaching through being an actor or a singer, I think there is always a tiny bit of ego there, I find. And I think in my case, there was a little bit of like, I started teaching because, well, I earned more money than waitressing, but I didn't learn to teach. I was really kind of going to people like, well, why can't you do this? You know, like this, it should be easy. It's easy for me. Why isn't it easy for you? And it wasn't. And that's when I actually gave up singing because I kind of felt like, oh my God, I don't know actually how to communicate this. And so I actually credit you with the reason why I started teaching again. Because I remember sitting in as I was doing my Estill master training, and you said to me, how many students do you all have? And everyone was like, oh yeah, I've got a couple. And I was like, I've got none. And you said, well, Zoe, you need to change that. You need to start teaching if you're going to learn to be a teacher. But there was a lot of fear associated with that of like, how can I actually communicate what I want them to be able to do? And that's obviously through the work of Estill and learning how to move the voice in that way and help them a lot better, but also accepting that everybody's, got this beautiful voice, but also they're coming in with all of these different things and different issues, if you kind of want to call it all of that, and things going on in their own lives.
Definitely. And that's one of the things that we have to acknowledge. What do people bring into a room? And we have to acknowledge that without feeding it. I think that's important because we need to know that unless you are a therapist, we're not a therapist. And
Yeah.
if people are coming for a singing lesson, that's what they want. And whatever else is going on in their life, that's what they want to focus on. And so I think really accepting that and knowing exactly how to move the voice on and what it is that they want, and give them to people something really practical to do. And then we always want to make sure it's not too difficult, so you're always assessing if it's within what they're capable of doing at the stage, because you want people to leave feeling positive.
Mm-hmm. Do you work the same way then in that case with the pros as well? I mean, I know you obviously we're talking like pro. There's a big range of what professional is, but do you work the same way with the professionals as with the kids at the kids,
Oh,
but in the
absolutely.
MA program?
Well, I don't only teach classes there. I don't do individual
Ah, okay.
singing lessons. So they're group classes at the Royal Academy for actors' voice.
Mm-hmm.
But if the difference with when you're going in to prepare an actor for a project is that you know that you've got them for a fixed amount of time, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
and that before, certainly with a film, whatever kind of preparation you're giving, whether it's accent work or whether it's voice preparation, when they start to shoot, you can't be coaching them. It's more reminders, because there's just too much going on. There's too many things that they're being asked to think about. So, and they're getting direction from the director, and then the DOP, the director photographer, will be going to have a little chat to them, and then perhaps sound will be going, and of course you've got hair and makeup, everyone, and there's me back going, don't forget, you can't. You've got
Yeah.
to, there can be just reminders. You don't have time to teach them new things.
Mm-hmm.
And in a way that's true. It's a little bit, it's different with theatre in a way, because
Mm-hmm.
you've got the nightly performances, and you can build in over the course of previews. But film is very, very different. And the other thing with film is that, of course, that once you've shot the scene, that's it, you move on. So you've got that day to get it.
Wow.
Very occasionally they'll come back and they'll reshoot something.
Mm-hmm.
But so there's added pressure. And you want to get, as I said, as much capture, certainly with the work that I've been doing, because you want to minimize the amount of post-production, ADR and extra recording, because you're so out of the scene. Then the actor's out of the scene, and it's very difficult to get the same kind of energy and feel to it.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I mean, obviously you're sort of like, and often it's not even chronologically, recorded. So it's and they could be doing the cry bit and then going into going into the previous bit, then like later on after all of that, and kind of finding that as well in their voice.
That's right, and it depends too if you're on location or if you're in the studio. So if you're in a studio, it's a little bit different. So you've got sets in a studio, and then you're doing that. But there's always going to be some location work. And so the shooting schedule is very much to do with availability of locations
Mm.
and things like weather, stuff like that, and then availability of the studio and time to build sets and all of that kind of thing. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's a very different and very disciplined form of performing, at least as disciplined as theatre, in a very, very different way, and as grueling, but in a
Wow.
different way,
Mm-hmm.
and more pressure to achieve, because once they've wrapped the scene, once you've shot the scene, then you're not going back.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned that I don't necessarily believe, well, I don't believe in regrets because I think that what we've had gone on previously kind of shapes the way that we are, as hindsight is a wonderful thing. But do you miss acting? Or did
No,
you ever think like, no, just
no, not now. I mean, it took me a little while because once I'd retrained as a voice teacher, I was still doing a little bit.
mm,
But I think it was more just a shift in mindset. But I always loved the coaching, and
hmm
I love what I love about the live workshops, and I'm sure you do too. Is that sense of communication? That's what I always loved, is a communication with an audience. So
hmm
I get that in the workshops, that sense of connection with people in a room, which I really love. And in one to one, it's that sense of communication which is so important. And every now and then I think, oh, but I think really and truly, 8 shows a week, no, no, I would love it for like a couple of nights, and then I just want to be coming home and having a glass of wine in front of the fire or the TV or something. I wouldn't want to be having to go out every night. Definitely, it's just not something that I want to do. And I think some people are singers, some people are actors, are artists, are writers. I'm a teacher, I'm a coach. That's what
hmm
I love to do. I
Yeah.
love I love that, bringing people on and helping them give skills and being able to fulfill what they want to do. I really love that engagement in teaching. And as much as I loved acting at the time, I feel so lucky to have found something else. It really is my passion.
hmm That's incredible. I think sometimes we can feel, when you're obviously it's not like you kind of said like, oh, that's a chapter I've got, you were teaching and then you were continuing kind of acting. Did you find that you sort of mm, did it sort of like peter out? Or did you just sort of go like, no, actually, I'm gonna stop the acting?
Just didn't like it anymore.
Okay.
And I said I couldn't find my fit.
Yeah.
The kinds of things that I wanted to do. I just wanted to do lots of Shakespeare and Sondheim, and strangely enough, there wasn't really, you know,
What? There's not like
yeah,
Sondheim going on at every
I
corner?
agree. I agree. I think there are other things too, which,
Uh-huh.
but I think those are the main things, and also in terms of casting and what was my casting and what I wanted to be cast as and how I was seen. That's what I mean. I just couldn't. It just wasn't for me.
hmm I can totally relate. I think it's I've had exactly the same sort of challenge basically, like finding that kind of like little niche that you can kind of fit into.
Yeah.
But did you not think about doing your own stuff, like writing your own show?
I did think about it, but it's just not enough. I mean, every now and then I think I've got an idea for a show. I don't know, who knows? In a few years' time, I might do it. But one of the things that I really love is poetry. So I
Yeah.
love teaching poetry and speaking poetry and helping people learn how to speak poetry. And I think a little workshop and a discussion about the speaking of poetry. I think it's such an incredible skill for actors to learn because it connects you into text and into precision and into style, expressing yourself in a stylized way, and it changes your vocabulary and also perspective on things. And
Mm.
some people are just so, so good. Some poets are so good at just absolutely nailing it. They have a way of expressing something. And as Neil Astor says in his who is one of the chief editors in Blood Axe Books and Staying Alive and Being Alive, two wonderful anthologies of poetry. And he talked about how you're able to, a poet writes something, and you go, that's exactly how it is.
Wow.
That they're able to express something. Carol Ann Duffy, I think, does that just so brilliantly. Her way of being able to absolutely nail an emotion in such a specific and unusual way, and yet which connects to so many people. Shakespeare, of course, does this
Mm.
with the plays, but all good poets do that.
Do you think that people who are wanting to become actors or even in musical theatre, because obviously we need to be kind of multifaceted as well, would you suggest that they get into poetry to
Oh my
help them
gosh,
with that?
absolutely. Absolutely. Because it teaches you you have to be able to identify, you have to be very specific. So with a
Mm,
really good poet, not a word or syllable is wasted. And it's very clear that there is such the image or where they are taking it, often described as being like a window onto a particular scene or experience.
Mm.
And you have to be that specific as an actor. So it teaches you to identify what's important, how it's being expressed, the temperature, if you like, of the emotion,
Mm-hmm.
and context and where it sits. And it teaches you to recognize it and then to be able to express it through your voice. So unlike a singer, there isn't music, there isn't tempo, there isn't pitch. The
Kind of
actor
makes it a
has
bit
to do that all
easier.
themselves. Well, it means you the way that you use that you are expressive with your speaking voice as an actor. I mean, pitch brings its own melody, brings its own issues, but that is a real skill, and it's
Mm.
one of the things that I really encourage with my younger actors is much more movement in the voice. And one of the things that during lockdown, and I'm sure like most people, signed up to pretty much every streaming service going, and I detected what I described as the Netflix monotone.
Really?
And you would get a lot of young actors were just sticking here in the voice, that nothing would move. And then some old hand would come on, some experienced act, and the voices are so much more interesting and expressive. And certainly for me, you're just suddenly drawn into the story. And it's a
Mm-hmm.
complete misunderstanding of what naturalism in inverted commas is. And how we use the voice to really draw people in and hook
Mm.
the ear, as well as express such a range and sophistication of emotion and intention. And it's such a skill. I think it takes at least as long to train the actor's voice as it does the singing voice.
Oh God. Okay. Can you do it alongside?
Yes. Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
obviously in a degree
Yeah.
program, but
Yeah.
I think a lot of people think that like, learning to sing is going to then strengthen. Somebody actually just said that to me the other day. Oh yeah, because I'm learning to sing, it must be strengthening like my actor's voice as well. And I was like, no. I mean, like in a way, you're moving the voice, you are strengthening the muscles involved. But I was like, it's a different skill, you got tempo sometimes with some of them. I mean, maybe is
Yeah.
that right, Anne Marie? I feel like I should ask the question rather than say the statement.
Well, I think it can do. I think it
Uh-huh.
really can do because you get used to a bigger muscular engagement, which you need
Mm-hmm.
because singing is extended. I mean, and performance speaking is extended voice use. Whether it's film or theatre, I think you might be able to get away with a bit less. Except I don't really think so. I think good actors have really good voices
Yeah.
wherever they're using it. And my preference is to really listen and listen to those actors who use their voices very dynamically in film, and there are many who do, and are not afraid to be on voice and to use a voice. But when you use your voice, when we have more vocal fold contact and you're producing more resonance, and you feel the voice differently in the body, you feel that sense of vibration or resonance, we hear the voice differently, and there's a
Mm.
different level of muscular engagement, and that takes a bit of getting used to. And I think the problem is now that for a lot of young actors, when they're not doing stage work, they're not used to that increased dynamic in each of those things.
Yeah.
And it kind of makes them step back from their voice to the point where I think it's a casting point now.
Okay.
I really do. And I think the more interesting and expressive your voice is, it makes you more noticeable. It makes you stand out more.
Okay. Noted. Noted for further auditions.
I mean, yeah, but think about the number of people who watch TV with subtitles on,
True, my husband does that. He watches
right?
everything with
And you say, well,
subtitles.
is it because they want to watch another screen? But sometimes they can't understand. Now, the thing is, in a cinema, you can't do that.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
true. In his
yeah,
case, it's actually because he can't understand over like for a lot of the accents and things like that. But yeah, absolutely. You want to be able to have people understand what you're going on about, what you're
well,
saying.
exactly, because this is kind of pretty basic, isn't it? But if we can't understand people, there is no communication. I mean,
Mm.
I genuinely heard a voice teacher, can you hear me? The silent inverted commas, trying to justify a lack of audibility and intelligibility. and saying that the audience needs to work hard on it. I said, yeah, guess how well that will go. That's not just not going to happen. If people can't understand you,
Yeah.
there's no communication. Why should they be bothered to listen? And I think that's still the most important thing for an actor. And that's quite skillful, actually, to be able to do that, certainly in a theatre context, without making it sound as though you're shouting or over articulating.
Mm-hmm. Or changing your accent in a weird way. I noticed that when I like start to articulate, I start to go like way too British. I like lose a lot of my like Kiwi accent, but a lot of the Kiwi accent is like so back. The tongue is so far back and down that as soon as you move it into a high, or as soon as you start to articulate, you sound very posh.
Well,
And
yes,
trying to maintain that. I mean, obviously, that's your work. Would be then to help me maintain my Kiwi accent without starting to change the where I come from.
yes, and I think that the thing is that in one's immediate um, memory or frame of reference, there may not be people who model what you are describing. But
Mm,
actually, once again, if we look outside of that a little bit, we can always find people who actually are very clear and tend to still have quite a strong accent, and I think, or a distinct accent. And
mm,
I think that is such an important point, that very often I think what's happening now is that the way that people are describing accent is so limited, that and that it's just the way that we speak, as opposed to saying, well, actually, we can look at, shall we call it, the highest common denominator, which is what I'm always going for. What's the highest common denominator in this accent? So we're looking at people who use their voices very well, who are expressive, who have range, who have clarity, and that's what we are after. I would say, because otherwise, how are we going to make people listen?
mm.
And we do have to make people listen.
Oh, absolutely, especially in like the world of today, of like where we are today as well, right? Like it is all about attention and getting people's attention like relatively quickly. And you have to
Yeah,
keep their
and
attention.
yeah, and some people are just use their voices very, very well, and
Mm,
tend to be very, very good actors. Not only what we talked about, and certain broadcasters. So wherever you are, there will be people who use their voices more expressively within the accent, and that's what we're looking for, I think.
do you have then a favorite exercise to gain that flexibility within the voice? I mean, I sort of saying that and I'm like, there's probably a couple. But do you have sort of like one go-to exercise if you had like a really short amount of time with an actor?
Oh, it'll always be the siren.
Okay.
I'll give the siren to absolutely everybody. And
Mm-hmm.
the Estill siren, uh, clear, quiet tone. So what we're doing is we're getting laryngeal movement, which is
Mm-hmm.
essential for pitch and for the speaking voice, maintaining really efficient vocal fold contact. It's very muscular, but that's not then being expressed with high breath pressure, or therefore an increase in volume. So it's a range exercise, it is a vocal warm-up exercise, it's a laryngeal movement exercise, it's a breath regulation exercise, it's an effort exercise, it is a vocal fold contact exercise. It does so many things if you let it, depending on what it is that you want to put your attention on. And I give this to all of the actors that I work with. I mean, I can just having doing that, I can feel the difference in my voice now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that they can do when they're sitting in a makeup chair before they go on set. And it gives them access to the range. It doesn't interfere with anyone else's job. It's
Yeah.
not too loud, it's gentle. And so then they get consistency in the voice from the beginning of the day to the end of the day.
Yeah. Oh,
But
that's
that's just to get
amazing.
it moving. And then there are exercises to encourage expressiveness. And a
Mm-hmm.
lot of as with singing, it's awareness. We have to know what our voice is doing in the first instance. And then how do we begin to make it more interesting? It's quite interesting too, listening to my children, my youngest, who is very expressive. I mean, it's just so is my oldest boy, he's 11, so my youngest is 9. And just listening to the movement and the range in his voice is wonderful,
Mm-hmm.
and long may it continue. I mean, I think with boys particularly, it can happen to girls too for different reasons, but with my pre-teen, his voice is already changing
Mm-hmm.
and is low, and so he I think he's a bit worried about it breaking, so he's keeping it lower. But we don't
Mm-hmm.
just say, just continue to play, so he's doing that, playing with his voice, so he doesn't get stuck in a certain part of the range because he's worried about what might come out.
I mean, I suppose at that age as well, they get quite nervous and a little bit shy about what sort of, the cracks and the voice changes that can go on. So I can only imagine.
Yeah, that's right. So to just keep them playing with their voices is so important.
Mm,
And people stop playing. But I think then looking at, once again, when you're looking at a piece of text or a poem or whatever, how do we identify what's important, and then what do we do with the voice? And that is a training.
mm.
That is a training. Some people do it very naturally. Some people need to be trained. Some people start off doing it naturally and then lose it. But it is, the whole point is that when we listen to it, we don't know that it's trained.
Which is, I mean, that's just testament to the fact, yeah, like you're saying, that they've gone and put in a lot of effort, a lot of work, a lot of effort to then make it look effortless. And because no one really wants to see most of these people that you work, well, that most of these professionals, they could probably, sing sort of like slouched over their table, drinking a cup of coffee and still sing like that. But no one really wants to see that. They want to see, it's about making it effortless and then kind of like making it look a little bit effortful, but not really. It's a challenge.
Well, it's interesting too that with a lot of people that I've worked with, they really haven't sung before.
Hmm.
So it's a whole set of new skills for them,
Wow.
and very challenging and very nerve-wracking. And one of the things I find incredible is the courage, actually. And I've got people sitting in my studio and they are nervous. They
Mm.
are really nervous because, and you've got to know your job as a vocal coach. You've got to know what you're doing because you've got to bring these voices on, because if they turn up and they can't do it, the finger gets pointed at you, and you don't know what they're going to be able to do when you start. You just don't know. But I absolutely trust the information that I have. Whether then if I'm able to share it with the person in front of me is another thing.
Mm-hmm.
So whether this information works, it absolutely works. But can I make it work for the person in front of me, which is always the most important thing. And it takes the time that it takes. But to see people they're all nervous. Everybody's nervous, but they do it anyway.
Yeah.
And I just find that incredibly moving a lot of the time, actually, that they don't let fear stop them. And getting back to your question about working with students and with professionals, I don't think I've worked with someone who isn't nervous, doesn't get nervous, but they
Wow.
do it anyway. That's the difference.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. Obviously, I know that you're a passionate teacher because I know you, but it also is showing, you're coming across with the passion of teaching. And I love that you're doing the course with Simon Ward. Can you tell us a little bit about that course so that people can find you?
Well, it's just what we're looking at is we did a course on psychology for performers a year
Mm-hmm.
or so ago. And thinking about it, I was saying to Simon, we really need to help teachers, and
Yeah.
teachers are not psychologists, and a lot of teachers are not giving help in dealing with emotions. And one of the most common ones is anxiety. And you either, kind of find your way. And one of the things that you have to do is, how do we allay people's fears? What can we give people to do to give them a process? But the first thing is we need to acknowledge it. And the
Mm.
thing is that nerves affect the body, which then affect the voice. So part of this is looking at anxiety, and I don't know if you've seen this, Zoe, but I've just shared an article from the Times here in London about jaw tension, bruxism, and grinding of teeth.
Oh,
And
I
this
did see
is
that you
something
shared
that
that.
has
Yeah.
happened a lot post-COVID,
Oh.
post-lockdown. People's anxiety and jaw tension, as you know, then connects into the tongue very, very
Mm-hmm.
easily. And this affects the ability of the larynx to move. Larynx has to move, everyone. The pitch really does. And the other movement that we need, and if there isn't movement, then people push.
Yeah.
And so we get this increase in unnecessary effort, which causes voice strain, but also
Mm-hmm.
loss of ease and expressiveness and agility and all of those things, and a big, big risk of strain. So looking at jaw tension, there are some things that we can do. So we may not be able to, and it's not our job to get to the heart of what's causing the anxiety or stress, which are different things. So stress might be over an event. So people are stressed over a performance that's coming up. So what do you need to do to the performance? So that's the technique. So what do they need to do?
Mm-hmm.
but then looking at the physical expressions of nervousness and being able to release that abdominal tension, of course, but that tension. So a lot of this is we will look at anxiety and stress, but also just how to create an environment where people can learn.
Yeah. Well, if you haven't had that modeled to you as a singer or as an actor, then it's, obviously you don't know what how to teach that then, because we often teach the way that we were taught. And so I think that's a fantastic course. So I'll put in the show notes when is
It's
your course?
it's on the 19th of October and it's early because Simon is in Sydney. But
Mm-hmm.
it want to be happening in the middle of the night. So it's 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. It's still British summer time. So that's in London. So it's London
Mm-hmm.
time. And we'll be going through some of the psychology and looking at this and also where the boundaries are. So as teachers, sometimes when you are sympathetic and encouraging, we want to make sure that that doesn't open a door for therapy
Yeah.
because I'm not a therapist and I
Mm.
don't want to be a therapist. I want to be a teacher. So at the same time as being encouraging and helping people to relax, but I don't want to invite confidences. That's a different thing. So being able to
Yeah.
say to someone, but people know that really on the whole, if they're coming for a lesson, they want to work on something. If they're getting some assistance elsewhere, but sometimes you might want to say to people, would you like a recommendation? Would you like to see someone so that you've got someone to go for some therapy or some counselling, and we can
Mm.
focus on the singing or the voice work, whatever it is that we're doing.
I think, unfortunately, I mean, I know that from my experience and from the way that I've heard other singers that come to me then talk about their own lessons, that sometimes teachers like to take the therapist,
Mhm.
put their little therapy hat on. And I'm the same as you. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a psychologist. Some of these things that they bring up, obviously anxiety with performance and performances and things like that, emotional regulation through going nerves and standing on stage, that's something that we can deal with. But some of these bigger topics, well, the bigger topics, let's just say most of them that they bring to us are kind of they need to be worked with through a professional as well. But you also teach you are doing a lot of online work as well with your teaching. I've seen that. So where can people find you if they want to, work on an Estill course? I know you're doing the level 1 and 2, and you also do your short courses as well throughout the year. Where can they find you?
At thevoiceexplained.com. So that is my website, and that's where I do workshops and courses, and I'm looking at doing an individual website as well. But people can contact me there if they want to reach out to me, and it's really it's a range of the topics generally are what I find myself teaching, and also things that I'm interested
Hmm.
in. So I've been very interested in the whole nature of the psychology of the lesson, not being, from a psychologist, but one can't, people get nervous, performers get nervous. How do we help calm them down in a way that's practical and appropriate? So the whole thing about knowing what the boundaries are.
Yeah.
And it isn't appropriate if one isn't a psychologist, and also if it's a singing lesson to open it up
Hmm.
as to that session when people are there to work on their voice.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll put all those details down in the show notes. And I just want to say thank you so much, Anne Marie. It's been like so fantastic to sit down with you. And I just want to say as I said before, you've really shaped my teaching, and I'm just so grateful for that. And you gave me the confidence again to do what I do, and also through the skills of my Estill master trainer that I did through you. And I just want to thank you so much, and also the work that you're doing. I think it's really fantastic. The way that you've shaped voice work through Estill voice training as well, but your part that you've played in London, I think and in the UK in general, for getting Estill into the world and being such an amazing. I don't want to say representative because I feel like that's the wrong way, because you are an instructor, but also, your work, I think, in the not only in the professional world, you've kind of surreptitiously got this in through the back door, as you're saying, into a lot of other institutions, but also into the greater voice work. And I think it's helped me. I know that it's helped other people. And I just think your work's incredible. Thank you.
Oh, you're very kind. Thank you, Zoe. And it's, and it's, thank you so much for the invitation. And it's just wonderful to see, you taking this work and doing so well with it and sharing it. And that's really what we want. And this work changes lives.
Mm,
Just change voices. It changes lives. And we forget, it's not we don't, I think people forget just how important voice can be to people.
mm,
And to feel that you can't use your voice really has a huge impact on one's life. So even if you're looking at performers who've had problems with their voices, this is a huge impact on their life, not just on their career. So it's this work and Joe Estill's work, being so specific.
mm.
Yes, it takes time, as you know. It really does take time to learn how to use it properly. But goodness me, what an incredible set of tools and understanding and way of really, really helping people get access to their voice again, but just find out there's so much more to their voice that they can do. So thank you very much. And it's wonderful to see you doing so well.
Thank you very much, Anne Marie.
My pleasure.
Wow, thank you so much, Anne Marie, for such an open and honest discussion about not only your work and your upbringing in the world of acting and music, but also about your work with such fantastic professionals like your work in Wicked. And it's just given us like a little glimpse into your world. So thank you so much. All of the information is down in the show notes, and I really do encourage you, if you are interested in learning more about the voice. Anne Marie is a fantastic teacher, so you can check out all of those details down below. You often see people online touting themselves as being the world's best voice coach and this and the #1 voice coach. But you don't often hear about the people who sign, like Anne Marie, who are required to sign quite strong NDAs about who they're working with. And that's those non-disclosure agreements. So they're not allowed to talk about their work at all. And those are the ones that are often doing the real work behind the scenes. So if you have the opportunity to work with Anne Marie, I really suggest that you take it. She's helped shape my life as a teacher and as a singer. We worked for a couple of years as well, and she was my singing teacher. And I really do credit her with helping me to discover a lot more about my voice than I knew before. So check it all out in the description below, and I'll see you next time on Singers Having Coffee. Ka kite aroha.